Good evening and welcome to our latest monthly version of An Audience With. I'm delighted to say we've got well-known South Cumbrian young farmer, NFU ambassador and Farmer's Guardian writer Will Case with us tonight. I think he should also get the title as the tallest farmer I know anyways, because if any of you have stood beside Will, I thought I was tall till he isn't, but that's another story. So we're very lucky to have Will, and we're gonna have a good chat through his farming family's history, where they're at the moment, and I think it's very relevant because Will's gone through that posh word of succession on his family farm, in that him and his brother have separated the business properly and amicably, and I think some really interesting insight into that. So welcome, Will. Thank you for your time.
Thanks, Andrew. Good to be here.
I think just on a note that Will and I were laughing about this when we were playing. The first time I met Will, he was sitting up a tree on the side of a rural track just outside Lake Windermere. We've remained in touch ever since. I think you probably need, before we get into the heavy detail, you probably need to explain why you were sitting halfway up a tree, Will.
Well, my good friend Alex Smith was organising the Ling Open Day that year at Winster, and I was appointed chief bider of time and sort of filler in on the tour. So it was kind of my job was to stall for time when the tour was running behind. So we had a bit of a laugh that day. Really, it was quite good. So we met all kinds of people that day, and it's surprising how many people have actually said about that. So yeah, all good fun.
It was indeed good fun. So, Will, you're obviously part of a long-established farming family. How long can you trace your family roots back down at Plumpton Foot near Ulverston?
Well, we have a bit of. I mean, I must say the Case family started down at Barrow-in-Furness near Furness Abbey, and there's a bit of local history we're quite proud of. Really, there was a William Case that farmed near the Abbey, Furness Abbey, and the abbot was to evict him from his farm and to make way from a deer park. Now, William Case, being a bit of an awkward so-and-so, took the abbot to the High Court and fought the eviction and won. And he went back to his farm, and the Cases are still farming, and the monastery doesn't look too clever at the moment, so we've outlasted them. So.
And are you as awkward as your ancient relative then, or?
Not at all, not at all. I'm easygoing and placid, so yeah.
So, where you're at? When did when did the family start farming where you're at now then?
So Dad had found a partnership with my uncle George at Barrow-in-Furness, and we moved to Plumpton. Well, they split their family partnership in 1990, and Grandad Fazackley, John Fazackley, who my grandfather farmed at Plumpton, and he was sort of looking to do less, and we want to do more, and so he sort of took a step back and kind of he just kept half the farm, and we farmed the other half of the farm. And then in '96, when I left school, we took over another part of the farm, and then up until I think Grandad kept farming until it would be the late noughties, I think. We get to about 2011, I think, and then Grandad sort of had the last couple of fields, which he sort of retired then. But we took over the farm at that rate, and it was it was an ongoing process really. But so we've had a Plumpton here, and I've done since 1990.
Excellent. Now, I think before you came home, or at some point before you came home and concentrated heavily, obviously, on the family farm, you were out in New Zealand for a period.
Yes, in 2003, I went as somebody who was kind of always worked at home, never worked for anybody else. For me, I kind of felt like I needed to maybe at the time get out of the home environment a bit and go and see something different. And really it was something that had always interested me. Looking to see how other people farm. New Zealand was something that I had a couple of friends visit previously, and and we have relations out there. Steve and Linda Johnson up at Waikato are you know, have been really fantastic people. You know, Linda's my dad's cousin, and we had an opportunity to go and sort of and stay with them. And Steve got me started with a few farms, and I got a $1,000 car and a boot full of spades, and I sort of went my way around 6 different farms, and for over sort of 5 months, and then I had a pal of mine came out and joined me, and we did some touring around New Zealand, and then another couple of pals came, and we went to Australia for the World Cup, and we had a good old time. So yeah, it was good.
Yeah, these experiences can't be beaten. I should have reminded our audience at the start, as well as me asking lots of questions for Will. If any of the people watching this webinar have any questions, if you use the question facility on the side of your screen, they do come through to me, and we can put them to either myself or Will. So just as a reminder there. But when you were out, is there anything that you brought home from what you'd seen in New Zealand that you then inspired you or changed things you did at home?
Yeah, I mean, all sorts really. I mean, I think you know, it was the great attitude, the can-do attitude of the Kiwi farmers. You know, there was a certain sort of anything's possible kind of feeling out there. You know, especially at the time. You know, because at the time it was, as it still is, talked about now, how we all have to function without any government payments, any rural payments, any subsidy, and that's been talked about for such a long time, you know, and continues to be talked about. And New Zealand was the place to be at that point where they'd been there and done it. And I decided I want to go out and learn how they managed to make it work. And the grassland and the stock and everything else was, you know, something that appealed to me. And yeah, you know, I think there was a lot of good lessons in the grassland. You know, I was lucky enough to be on a place. This is all back in 2003 with techno grazing, rotational grazing there, which, you know, was fabulous and a great privilege to be there, really, and you know, some very forward-looking people, and you know, I think yeah, I probably came back with all sorts of big ideas, and I think sort of the wet summers I think we had following 2003 beat a few of those out of me. But yeah, I think a lot of the principles of sort of, you know, grassland management, of you know, yeah, some of the principles of running the stock, not all the principles of running stock out. You know, they had some good ideas, and I tried to take some of the best parts of it, some of the sort of the selection that they use out there, and yeah, just trying to take some of the good bits and try and incorporate them what we've got at home, really.
Yeah, and that's refreshing to hear, because we've all, whilst there's many of us don't like change, if we're honest, change is good, isn't it? And at least it means you're trying to go forward. But so that's refreshing to hear. Now, I think before we go on to succession, your family business sort of diversified in various ways in both agricultural terms and non throughout the years. What was the inspiration behind them, and the good and the bad?
Well, necessity, to be honest. Yeah, necessity. I mean, we were there probably. Well, look, sort of. I left school in '96 as a Newton Riggs student, and then I went to, you know, Newton Riggs. My brother Simon did very similar, and we were, you know, mad keen farmers, and we loved it all. And stock farming's our sort of you know, bread and butter, but as the sort of time kind of went on a little bit, we kind of realised we had to sort of grow the business for 3 family incomes to come from a beef and sheep business. You know, at the time we probably got up to about 1,200 lamb ewes. We'd have about 200 or 300 store cattle on. You know, we were sort of yeah, we were busy lads, but it wasn't necessarily making an income needed to sort of support three households, and so we had to keep our eyes open on what we were going to do and what we were thinking about. So one of the first changes we made was free-range hens. So back in 2005, 2005, it all set off with John Bowler. He'd come to our local farmers club, and my dad came back from farmers club, and he was like, God, that was. He was a challenging man to I think I'll say that, and he was you know, he was quite challenging to the audience, and and you know, yeah, Dad was a little bit taken aback with his style, and but we kind of yeah. Trying to be tactful there. So
Yeah.
but we looked at that a bit harder, and we were kind of like, right, okay, there's something in this, and we can maybe make this work. So you know, we went to visit some good friends of ours at Geldards, and one or two other people locally, and you know, certainly over the Kendal area. You know, getting a start with free-range eggs, and yeah, we went into it in 2005. We put up a 6,000 bird shed, and then in 2007 we put up 6,000 bird industry standard kind of, you know, reasonable free-range houses. And the trouble at the time, nobody knew how to build them because no one was really building them. So we kind of had to learn a bit as we went along and trying to decide, you know, because there was a lot of different ideas. There wasn't like a standard, this is the way to do it sort of thing. So yeah, we did that, and then that went really well. And then I suppose we then set about house building. I guess really was our next kind of mission, and property development, because you know, we're quite happy to turn our hand to new things a bit, and we're quite happy builders. A lot of farmers are, you know, we're quite happy building. We sort of we get stuck into different projects, so we and I suppose this is maybe kind of where the succession, I suppose, plan almost starts off, I guess, really, because we had a you know, a bigger farm at Plumpton and a smaller farm at Barrow, and so yeah, we had to kind of, we wanted to sort of develop the properties really to make them rather more more equal, more sort of, you know, get them there. So that was kind of, yeah, we developed that side of it. So we started Rob's Water. There was a small cottage on there which we demolished and put a good house on there, sort of thing, timber framed construction, and we did a lot of the project management and everything else, you know, the humping bricks about and carrying things, fetching and carrying for the builders and stuff and whatever. So we developed that property, and Simon moved into that house, and probably always with a mind to, you know, yeah, sort of making it a more valuable property, probably to sell, to trade up to a bigger farm, yeah, and then which kind of ultimately set us off on the path to eventually in 2015 go into dairying.
Yeah, that was going to be my next question for you. You've gone down the dairy route, haven't you?
And I was in between there, built house with Mum and Dad as well. In 2012, built house with Mum and Dad as well, because we had a practice run, if you like, with Simons, and we set off building Mum and Dad's in January, and they moved in the July. So we got quite good at timber frame house building by the time, and so we got that done, and then that kind of allowed us to sort of address our work-life balance, if you like, our issues we had with work and life and stuff, because both Sam and I were living in town, and you know, we were sort of wanted our families on the farm really, so we were sort of you know, able to kind of have more of that life. So yeah, that was the next project, and then which led us on to the dairying really.
Yeah, because you're quite a rare thing, a relative new entrant into dairy. You know, we all know or work with lots of dairy farmers who have gone out of dairying in the last 10, 15 years, and you're one of those, you're the opposite. And so what was the thought process behind that, and how did it go?
Well, we kind of turned it as it was the family was returning to dairying, because
good point. Yeah.
Because both my dad and my granddad, you know, and Uncle George, you know, we're all dairy farmers at one point, and so Simon had always had an interest in dairying, and it really was trying to maximise the property really, and dairying, you can, you know, from with a smaller acreage can be, you know, obviously produce a good output. So I mean, so yeah, we looked at putting hens on the farm, but there's issues with the entrance bridge to Rob's Water, and so that wasn't going to lend itself to sort of Arctic wagons coming. But and Simon had always been interested in dairy. He likes. We've a number of good friends there, dairy farming, and it's always been an interest, you know. So and yeah, so you know, we set off in 2015, and At the time, I think we'd about 80 pure suckler, 80 Solaire suckler cows. So yeah, we kind of, well, the project kind of set off in 2014 when Derry was flying, and then in 2015 Derry was in a bad place really, and I think people kind of thought we'd lost the plot, to be honest. But as it was, we kind of backed our own decision a little bit, and we kind of, I think when you've got a plan and you've thought it through, and you farm for a long time, don't you? And if you just chop and change and chase the rainbow, personally, I think you'll always have a hard time. I think you've got to have direction in life, and I think you've got to execute things and see them through, and try and back yourself. You know, I believe.
No, I think you're absolutely right there. There's two interesting things that bring to mind there. I've got one client who's been very successful in farming, and his view is you should always be doing the opposite, because there's, we're all, sheep are a flying trade at the moment, aren't you? Yeah. So everyone would be, the sort of thing, oh, we'll have to have some more sheep, we'll have to get some sheep, but it just ends up, you get in at the top, and there's only one way. You should really be trying to get in when things are at the bottom. And it's difficult. I think having the plan and sticking to it, because you're right, chopping and changes, you're more likely to hit all the wrong points rather than the right points, aren't you?
I must say, with the dairy, like you said, one or two people had said, "Oh, that was a sharp manoeuvre getting in at the bottom," and it was like, no, this wasn't like a sharp, quick manoeuvre where we just done this flash business decision and gone into dairy and when things were cheap. It was something that we've been looking at for, at least a couple of years, and it was a long-term view, really. That was that we kind of, between us, had the sort of faith to keep it going, and it was, and a number of things. I mean, when things were looking difficult with dairying, the beef cows are worth more, so we set off to swap one suckler cow for a dairy cow, and when we actually did the swap, it was considerably better than that, a lot better than that, and cows were reasonable value, and we sort of we had some good advice with the building and things, and there were opportunities to buy things and get good value at that time, and we bought second-hand robots. Simon's very sort of machinery minded, and has quite a gift for tinkering. So we bought some LEA2 robots, and he's not afraid to kind of get the spanners out and have a go. So we were all like that. We have to be. I think as a farmer, you end up in that. You end up as a jack of all trades, don't you? Sometimes, and there's nothing wrong with that as well. We're proud to be a jack of all trades. You've got to be.
Farming makes you very practical, doesn't it? And even though I'm just a hobby farmer now at nights and weekends, what I learned back at home over those 20 years when I was at home, and that you just learn how to take something to bits or practically get through a situation, don't it? And you can always relate to that.
A good friend of mine said we don't always appreciate what we know as farmers. He's a builder and a farmer, and he sees both sides, working with other industries, and farmers can turn their hands to so many things, it's a great thing.
It is indeed. So I suppose diversification and things, and obviously your family were fairly forward thinking when your dad and your uncle separated businesses, and then obviously there's yourself and Simon, both with families and things. So how did, because I know, and you and I have discussed it, but I know a lot of people find that succession and how you're going to separate the business and deal with it from one generation to another is often the elephant in the room in farmhouses and other businesses, I must say, that doesn't get discussed. It's always one of those things that they'll sort it sometimes. How did you go about it, or how did it happen in your family?
I mean, it's never always. I mean, God, we don't get it all right either. It's never easy. It never is easy in any situation, because it's change, and as I say, most of it was really by necessity. I mean, we wanted to, as far as the house building goes, we wanted to improve our lives, and that wasn't taking over every part of the business, but we wanted to be living on farm, and that was the first step to kind of trying to, you know, find some kind of life balance with work, like, and that, you know, but really the business, you know, splitting the business. I mean, you know, for Dad, Mum and Dad have always been so pro splitting the business at some point. You know, they were always. Dad always felt it was the best thing he'd ever done. Dad and Uncle George have always got on tremendously well, and I've always enjoyed working together. But you know, splitting the business, you know, gave my dad the independence to you know, follow the things he was probably more interested in and things, and you know, and the same for Uncle George, and you know, and Dad's always said to us, you know, that will be the best thing you'll do, is to reach a point to split the business. So it's always something we've kind of had in the middle distance, and I mean, you know, we really were kind of more. I suppose things were kind of brought on maybe, you know, a little bit quicker. We have an Simon had recently had cancer, non-Hodgkin's lymphoma, and you know, he still has that. I mean, but he's good. He's had his chemo. He's well. He's working, you know, and he's on very good form. But he was very mindful. I mean, it was something was always in the middle distance, and I think it is for most people. I think everybody kind of has that. We'll get it sorted out at some point.
Yeah.
And it was really Simon drove this on with such a lot of things. You know, he was kind of, I think we should go for this. You know, and I think at the time I was a little bit like, yeah, right. You know, I hadn't been something that was kind of staring me in the face, and then we kind of, as the more you talked about it and thought about it, and as a family we kind of chewed it over. And say, Mum and Dad have always been very, very for that. We kind of started to think about it more, and it was like, yeah, you know, we can make this work. And so yeah, by sort of, yeah, just by talking about it, by getting good advice, and you know, and yeah, really sort of finding a good route through it was you know, the bank have been very supportive. You know, we've had good advice all along, and yeah, so you know, we've managed to find a way.
And I think the refreshing thing from my point of view, and I'm sure many of our listeners, is that you've done it at relatively young ages. It hasn't been something that's forced upon you, but it's you know, there's too many people think, oh, if you split a farm business up, it's because you've all fallen out, and yours is completely the opposite. Yours is for good business sense, but also probably strengthens the family relationship, because it's sorted and clear, isn't it?
Yeah, it was a, you know, I mean, it kind of brought it to a head with Simon's health, and he kind of wanted his affairs in order at the time. You know, he was a bit like he wanted, you know, he didn't want any sort of ifs and buts, if you like, and yeah, he was very strong with, you know, with dealing with how his health, and you know, and as he is, and you know, and the more we kind of talked about it, the more we thought, yeah, this is the only way. You know, we have to make this work, because you know, for everybody's sake. And it was, yeah, I mean, yeah, it was. And you know, it still is an ongoing process. We're now operating independently, but we still work together. You know, we share silage tackle, we share muck spreader, slurry tanker. You know, and I lambed Simon sheep this year, and you know, his dry cows are through here, and you know, we kind of, yeah, we still probably talk on the phone as much as ever, you know, but we are, you know, as a business entity operating separately, and it doesn't always have to be a great big, you know, cliff edge, like this is the big cliff edge chop, you know. To a degree it has to be, but I mean, you know, there's ways of, you know, just yeah, doing it in a workable sort of manner, you know. I don't think there's be a big bang.
I think that's, you know, you've described that perfectly, and I think what I take out of that, and we try and advise clients as well, is that, you know, you might be wanting to be in control of your own destiny and have independent businesses, but it doesn't mean you lose all the economic and efficiencies of working together. And as long as it's all done fairly, you know, we've all, and you know, we don't name names, but you could name some as well, where you've seen family businesses split up and they go totally separate, and they've got to have one of everything themselves. And you think, well, there's two family farms there, and they've got one of each. It's just not common sense, but that's the way it sometimes drives. So yours is, you know.
Yeah, it's not always easy, but if you can, you know, say, you know, we always, I suppose Mum and Dad always kind of encouraged us in our own departments, if you like. We kind of always were sort of, you know, we never really had sort of, sort of treading each other's toes, if you like, with working and things. And Simon and I have always got on, and you know, and we worked together happily, and yeah, you know, but it was kind of bring, you kind of also get to thinking about, well, I've 3 sons. Simon's got 2 daughters and a son, so we've six little people in the next generation, which will have 6 opinions.
Yes.
And to be honest,
pretty strong ones before you realise.
Yeah. And to be honest, I mean, Simon and I could work happily together. You know, yeah, quite happily together, and it wouldn't be a problem. You know, if that was kind of, you know, if it was just a case of doing your work, we just happily crack on as we are, you know, in some ways. But you've got to kind of, we were just, yeah, kind of had to be mindful that, blimey, where is the last, you know, our eldest is going to be turning 13 on Sunday, and you think, where did that go? And it goes so fast, doesn't it? And we didn't kind of want to be going another generation again, if you like, before we tackle this. And it was, but everyone has their own situations, and I'm not saying we've got it all right, because I mean, you know, I dare say there's things, you know, that could have been done differently or better, but we found a way to make it work, and we're still sort of getting there. But you know, we're okay.
I think you're absolutely right, and we see loads of families, and they are all different. But I think, you know, what you've done is forward thinking. We all know many farms where they just don't grasp the elephant in the room. And I think the other thing is that we find, and I'm sure you would agree with, is that where the next, even if it's all in the same business, where the next generation are allowed to drive on and develop the business in the 20s, 30s, and 40s. Those businesses develop where dad still holds the checkbook and signs them till he's 75. Those businesses just don't develop, because by the time somebody gets the checkbook, they're too old to do it.
Yeah.
You know, if you're gonna go and borrow a mortgage, you want to do it when you're 35 rather than 55, don't you?
Definitely. Yes, I mean, Dad and Uncle George found, you know, my granddad Case had ill health, and Uncle George was sort of thrust into running a big farm, a milk ground. Well, they had 3 farms, did a lot of milk cows at the age of 16, and Dad was, you know, Dad was just young, and from a young age they had to make decisions, you know, and from an early age they were sort of running the farm, doing the work. They went to Northern Ireland on the ferry. Dad skipped school, and they went to buy store cattle, grazing cattle in Northern Ireland, and they got on the ferry at Heysham and went across the water. So, you know, they used to do that and things, and you know, so from a young age.
They would have to try and get past all the Brexit controls that gets anything in and out of Northern Ireland now.
I think it was probably easier in those that's for sure. But yeah, you know, it was they had to make decisions from a young age, and they always, you know, Dad always impressed upon us that we need to, you know, make decisions at a young age, and we had to kind of, you know, sort of, just be active and be amongst things from a young age. So we were fortunate in that position that you know, that although it was hard for Dad and Uncle George, they sort of were given their head early, and they, you know, Dad was, you know, wanted us to give us that same sort of feeling, if you like, and you know, that's not to say we, you know, we've always agreed on everything as far as everything goes, but that's family, isn't it? And we, you know, we've always found a way to kind of find a good way to sort of get there, you know, with stuff, and there's various things that I've done, I'm sure, you know, that my dad's thought, what are you doing that for, like, and you know, it's how it goes, isn't it? But
yeah, I always said, it wasn't with my dad, but my first boss in Amster Watson, who taught me loads, I always remember he said, I'll give you enough rope to hang yourself, because that's what you need to learn. But he says, I'll just tug you back before it gets to its end. Yeah. You have to, now you and I are both quite active on Twitter, and there's some interesting conversations on there. And I think one thing that comes across about you both on this interview and on Twitter is your passion for the red meat industry.
Yes.
And also your sort of thoughts on where UK farming is going as we see the now inevitable decline in the basic payment and things. What sort of things are you doing on your farm to sort of, or what you're thinking of doing to react to the fall in the support from the basic payment and things?
I mean, we you know, yeah. So yeah, very passionate about the red meat industry, and yeah, no, absolutely. I think we've got a great industry, a very strong industry, really, and I think we've a lot to be proud of in the UK with our red meat industry. I think we should be, as so often said, proud of the standards that we farm, the livestock we keep, and how well we keep it, and how what a fantastic countryside we have and what we do as an industry. And and I think yeah, there's moving forward, I mean, we're going to have challenges. I mean, but I mean, the current trade as far as the beef and lamb sector goes, especially the sheep sector, is immensely encouraging. I mean, you read things, and certainly there's bits in the Farmers Guardian and one or two other publications about how much of a drop there's been in exports of both, beef and lamb.
Yeah.
You sometimes think a little bit like, I don't know where that's going. I don't know, but you to use a rugby analogy, you play the team in front of you, don't you? And you can only farm what's in front of you, and you play the cards you dealt. And at the moment, we've got a good trade. We're full of fire as industry, and I think I think things look good. I mean, yeah, moving forward, BPS reducing, that sort of thing. How are we coping with that? Well, I mean, personally here, we've put another 6,000 hens on. I think for us, we're going to increase the size of the business to sort of try and mitigate the loss of the BPS. So all being well, we'll be up to 24,000 hens this end of this year, and that's sort of the first sort of stage really, as far as I can see for our business, is to really sort of try and mitigate that loss by increasing production and hopefully making the most of the ELMs and the environment payments that are going to come along as well, because we're in the HLS agreement here, and we were probably one of the last farms in the country, I think, to get a HLS agreement. Right. And people have got mixed feelings about HLS. I think it's been good for us. I think we tried to do it without impacting our production too much. We had to alter a few things, but we were often, this farm just falls outside the LFA boundary, but we've always felt it's more of an LFA farm, if that makes sense. With a number of features and woodland and things, and sort of rougher pasture, which we were never able to make those LFA payments and things on, and so HLS kind of we have a triple SI with the Salt Marsh, which kind of gave us our golden ticket to get into HLS, which and I think the schemes work well for us, and I would like to sort of take that forward into ELMS and try and make that work as well. And yeah, we'll find a way. I have 3 young sons, and I'd like to think we can make a good business going forward, and like to think they'd want to be part of it.
It's interesting, and I think you and I get very defensive when our industry, red meat, into both being of red meat descent, and you're still in it, gets pushed, and it's. I think the one that really frustrates me is the science behind that. It's yours and my cows farting, putting it politely, that causes global warming, and we know it doesn't, and we could go all night. But you mentioned the salt marshes, because you're using them to produce salt marsh lamb, which you're selling, which is a niche product you're selling. There's no better product than that for using some ground that is useless for anything else. You'll be doing no environmental damage at all to it with your sheep grazing across it, and it's.
No, I mean, we've.
You market some of that yourself, don't you?
Yeah, I mean, we're say the Salt Marsh. I mean, we're quite proud of the fact it's been monitored for sort of 20, 30 years now, and you know, the species have remained the same. The management's pretty much remained the same. I mean, it's it's a lump of organic ground, to be honest. I mean, it just is what it is. We don't have a very huge marsh at all, but I mean, it's it's remained the same, and the habitats as well as the grazing has remained the same, and it's something that we've sort of built upon, working with Booths Supermarket and other butchers, Mickinson's of Grange, oh God, I've gone blank. Yes, some very good customers, and we've sort of made that work really, and yeah, it's got a good following for Booths. People seem to get a lot of interest working with the Wilson family at White Farm. We started the two of us alternate the weeks and supply lamb throughout the summer months. So, yeah. So Robert Grace, sorry, another excellent butcher, and so yeah,
it's all well.
It's been very supportive, and it's worked very well for a number of years now. So yeah. Yeah, it happens, doesn't it?
I can forget anything nowadays.
Well, yeah, no, Salt Marsh Lambs are really good.
Yeah, no, and I think it's just a classic, and we're probably as I think, and I'm sure you agree, I think as an industry we're bad at selling all the good stuff we do already that is so sustainable and environmental and things that we just do and take for granted, don't we?
Yeah, no, definitely. I'll tell you what, like I'm about to set on fire here. I'm just going to shut the curtain.
I thought the sun didn't shine in it.
All right, that's better. I could hardly see. I was getting absolutely blinded.
Yeah, I thought
you're always telling me I can hardly see the screen.
You're always telling me how much it rains in South Cumbria, not that the sun shines.
Well, it occasionally does shine. It shines in the righteous, doesn't it? You see down here, so you know.
Oh, never a true word said. So we've got to. Before we finish, I think you've been very honest and candid. We've got a couple of interesting questions pop through. One of which I'll try and answer because it's asking about one or two tax things. So that'll test me at night at 7:45 of a night, won't it? But there's another one, and I'm not going to say the name, but there's obviously someone. There's a question come through that is in a very similar situation to your family, but hasn't got as forward-thinking parents, may I say, and he's struggling to get the conversations about, splitting the partnership up and not falling out, but going their own ways. And I know it's a difficult question, but he's sort of saying, if I can't get my father to talk about this with his uncle in the partnership, I've got a wife and kids, I need to look after myself. What would you do? Now, I'd be interested, and I know you're not a specialist in it, but what would you, is there any experiences you've gone through that you could throw at that one?
That's a tough question. Honestly, I think just being straight up and honest and straightforward with each other, I think, and I'm sure as a family they'll be able to work it through. But yeah, gosh, that must be difficult. I'd say it wasn't always easy for us, but it's just to try to be honest and look at your life and maybe just step by step. I don't know. It's say the main focus for us was getting on farm and creating a life on farm, and then as far as the business side of things, that was, we just worked up to that point, if you like. But we were made partners in it and everything else like that. And I don't know, I have no idea what. I mean, generally, even though we've not had autonomy, if you like, we've been running the day-to-day side of the farm for quite some time now, and Dad's sort of been happy to let us get along with it a lot of the time, and then some of the time where he's kind of gone, whoa, but honesty and sort of, I don't know, hoping that there's enough respect there that that you can all sort of find a way to make it work. But that's
I think that's a cracking answer, Will. I think a couple of the way you start, it's about being honest, isn't it? And none of these conversations are easy. And I have to say, if I'd stayed at home on the family farm, and me and my dad and get on brilliantly still, but that conversation would have been blooming difficult for me and my dad. I know it would, but I think you hit the nail right on the head. It's about being honest, isn't it? And open. And then another viewer's put, perhaps they could forward a copy of this recording to the questioner's dad. I like that. I like that. But no, it's about being honest. I think it's about also just sitting down and trying to get people to understand how it would affect you and your family, or in this case, this lad and his family.
I think as well as, if I could just make another point, it's also a little bit as well for kind of for the senior sort of end of this partnership and things, is also is finding a role for them, and a role that is comfortable for them in their lives, that they can ease back to, that they want to kind of. We're still trying to decide. Dad's still trying to decide what he wants to ease back to, because he's not very good at easing back. He works as hard as ever, and he's kind of, although he's left the partnership, and he's still amongst it. He's still involved, and it's kind of it's finding a role for everybody, isn't it? And I think when everybody is kind of can see their place within a business, even though maybe the financial and the running of the actual nuts and bolts of it is maybe taken away from the older generation, they maybe can have a bit more freedom to kind of think, well, maybe I can perhaps, go on that holiday or do that thing a bit, as well as not being out of the business. I can still pitch in and work and do whatever, but I can maybe find another new role that's not losing everything, but just readjustment. So
no, that's a very valid and a really good point. That it's understanding about how the older generation feels as well, and that they're not being forced out. It's just it is just a succession and making it work for everyone. It isn't all about younger generations taking over. It's just a gradual process. And as I say, I was on a dairy farm in Yorkshire yesterday. I spent yesterday seeing clients in Yorkshire, and we were joking on, and the younger generation said, "Oh, dad's retired." He doesn't. He said he was retiring on the 31st of March. I think he's about 72, but. Yeah, I said, so what has that meant? And I said, is he really retired? No, he just comes in the parlour 20 minutes later in the morning. That's what retirement means to him. And yeah, but we're happy. It was working for all the family. Dad had his bungalow, letting the son run the business, but he was still there all the time.
That's it. Yeah.
Oh, well, I've got a question, and it's an interesting one. How will the government's tax changes affect passing on farms? Now, well, as I say, 10 to 8 on a Wednesday, that's quite a tough question, but I think we're and Will could probably attest to this, but the way the tax legislation is, and has remained surprisingly, is that you can pass farm businesses and farmland down between families with no tax by using the relevant capital gains and inheritance tax reliefs. And we were all a bit scared that, or fearful that, A, because there's a pandemic to pay for, and B, because certain quarters don't like, others seem to think that landowners and the farmers are wealthy, maybe asset rich, but whatever. The tax days, it was nicknamed, on the 23rd of March this year, would change how farms are taxed and things. Now, I would have put a few quid on that tax changes would come to farm inheritance tax and capital gains tax, and it didn't. So I would have lost some money. So there you go. So really, with a bit of good advice like Will's had, and a bit of forethought and getting your act together, if it's just farming assets, as Will said, you can pass them down fairly tax efficiently to the next generation, or sideways, etc. So that was a relatively easy question for me.
Just get good advice.
Yeah, it is, isn't it? And I think it's about, it's like everything else, be it whether it's planning advice, whether it's accountancy advice, whether it's tax advice, or whatever, it's about get it early, isn't it? Don't come and say I've done this, because there's not a lot you can do after, is there?
No, you've got to take a long run up at these things, and something that needs to get done over time, because nothing ever happens as fast as you think it should do, and that's life. And take time over it.
I've got one sort of final. We're running close to our time, but I could sit here and talk all night. Will and I were planning for this, and we said what's it? Will said, how does it work? I said it's a bit like you and me sitting in the pub having a pint, but here we're not allowed to sit in the pub and have a pint yet, so it's like that, but without the pint and the pub. So I could sit here all night, but one last.
I could manage one of them now.
Well, yeah, I could murder one. But one sort of final question, and we'll sort of wrap up, is of all your experiences through diversification, through succession, through just being in New Zealand, what's the one thing you've learned that sort of sticks with you?
What's the one? You get out what you put in. You get out what you put in. That's Dad's always told us that right from the very start. And I think wherever I've been, wherever you go, you get out what you put in, and there are no free lunches. You've got to, if you want something to work and you want to get something good out of anything, you've got to put your all into it, really. And that's it's a right cliche, is that? But I mean, it's never a truer word. Yeah, that's there's nothing without hard work and giving it your all. And yeah, I always think anyone who thinks there's somebody clever doing something without any efforts and it's all just happening for them and it's easy, isn't looking hard enough, because anyone who's doing a good job of anything is probably working their socks off. Even if they look quite chilled out, probably is absolutely beneath the surface.
I think that's real solid advice and very honest. I think I find myself saying that even in a career as accountancy here in the offices. If you want to do well in whatever you do, you've got to put it in before the more you put in, the more you'll get out. I think it's a work-life balance. I'm really strong about that as well. But the more you put in, probably the more it gives you the opportunity to have that work-life balance as well, doesn't it?
It's all part of it, isn't it? Yeah, it's all. Yeah, we try, often fail, but try and have a work-life balance. It's I don't know.
And that you get no second chance, do you? We're only here once, so we better make some mayhem and cause some trouble in the meantime.
Definitely, yeah. No, you've got to have some fun along the way, don't you? Yeah.
So just before I thank Will, obviously, a couple of things just to promote. Obviously, our next audience with is the third week in May. Another name that many of you will recognise. We're very lucky to have Annabelle Hamilton, who is well known to us on Twitter. Did the Farmers of the UK on Twitter for a week. She's just recently gone back home to work on the family farm at Bee Edge up near Berwick. And so that'll be another interesting night, and just keep an eye on your emails for the link to that. Also, we're trying to gain an insight and some information into the agricultural sector at the moment, and views on how businesses are going to adapt for the BPS and succession, all things. So we are conducting a survey with farmers and our clients and non-clients, just farmers. So if you see a link to a survey in the follow-up email to this, please feel free. It's totally anonymous, just to put your thoughts down. It's a multi-choice, as I used to call them when I did my exams, or multi-guess if I didn't know the answer. So I'd appreciate that. But most importantly, Will, I would like to thank you. I think you've been as good fun as ever. You've been very candid, very honest, a great example. I think your parents and you and your brother are a great example of how to drive a business forward.
Thank you.
Keep the generations going at it, and I'm sure you would be well versed to if your family want to be farmers, you would let them have a good crack at it as well. So on behalf of everyone, I thank you for your time. I've thoroughly enjoyed it. And next time it will be over. It might not be on a webinar, but it will be over a pint with you and I somewhere. Thank you. Thank you very much. Cheers, yeah. Appreciate it. Cheers.
Thanks, Andrew. Thank you.
You're welcome. Cheers.